Hi, I'm Robin, and I'm doing this PowerPoint presentation on the Mississippi River flood of 2011. Okay, the areas that it was affected was Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, all the lower states of the Mississippi River along both sides. The classification was a major flood. Geohazards. Well, the cause of the flood was we had a really heavy winter storm, winter snowpack that winter, and it was melting due to a warm and early spring. Along with that warm and early spring, we also got a very wet spring. So you put the two together, you got lots of water, and along both sides of the Mississippi River is very flat. It's not high hills or anything like that. So it just kind of goes out and it just kind of flattens and spreads out, which causes a lot of flooding. Now this is a video. I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to give it a try. Here we go. I think I'm going to get it to work this time. Let's watch it. It's pretty good. NASA did a good job on this, showing just exactly some of the effects. Now there's Cairo, Illinois. They actually opened up one of the levees to divert the water away from Cairo. That is the Missouri and Kentucky border there. And that's what it looked like before and what it looked like during the flooding. You got 12 miles across in that one area, or 13 miles across in that one area there. The water was. Imagine the narrower spots, the water was running a lot faster than in some of the wider spots. 48 feet, only inches below record in 1937 flood. Here we go. This is town of Memphis. Look at this. So close to the flooding. A lot of the town was affected by this, I believe. Here it almost looks like the river is going to try to straighten itself out in a way. I think one of the things they were afraid of right after the flood was the fact that the river might reroute itself. There's the Arkansas-Tennessee border. And thank you, NASA. That was very good. It was nice to see that. Gives you a good example of just how much area was affected. That's cute. Okay, so let's move on. We got primary hazards. You got massive amounts of erosion and dirt and sediment moving. You got high level velocity water moving that's going to move your larger pieces of your car and so forth. You got water entering human buildings, which the biggest thing is there is black mold. Even after the waters recede and you start drying your house out, you get this black mold in your walls. It is harder than heck to get rid of. And it's very dangerous for your respiratory system. So a lot of places, I would imagine, People would be very sick trying to move back into their homes, or happen to make the decision that they are just going to tear it down and start over. You've got after the water retreats, the flood waters, everything is usually covered with this really thick, slimy, gooey sediment everywhere. You've got livestock and pets that have been carried away and drowned and lost. You've got humans that same have been carried away and lost and drowned. And you got floodwaters can concentrate garbage and debris and pollution in different areas, and that's kind of a secondary effect or health hazard. And your secondary health hazards and so forth are drinking water supply may become polluted. I think in this case it really did, especially if sewer treatment plants are flooded, if there were any sewer treatment plants flooded in the area. Gas and electrical services may be disrupted. You got transportation systems to be disrupted, resulting in shortages of food and clean supplies and all the things that they need to get started. I know some roads were impassable after the waters had receded due to the sediment and the dirt that had washed up and covered the roads. They had to plow them out, and in some cases they had to completely rebuild some roads afterwards just to get stuff into the area. Location of the river canals, like I mentioned before, can change, and that was a big concern with this flood. Sediment depositing by flood may destroy farmland. You've got crops and areas where people have farmed for generations, and now all of a sudden they have this foreign soil on top that they've got to try to deal with that might have other things in it. It might have the oil from the cars that was in the water. It might have hurt the soil and so forth. A lot of different things there can happen. Jobs, of course, are going to be a problem. Getting back to work, getting services going, getting farmers back to doing their work, getting the economics going back in a community after a flood is definitely a problem. Then we've got people that were dealt with. We got thousands of evacuations. They, in some areas, knew beforehand that they were going to be evacuated before they broke open the levees to let loose some water. So they got to be able to be prepared. But there was 1,300 in Memphis and Tennessee, 24,000 in Louisiana and Mississippi. There weren't as many deaths as I would have thought. There were only 392, a little over 400 deaths, with 14 in Arkansas. Now, these were not all flood related. They were the storms and stuff that were also related with the flooding, but it was not all flood caused deaths. This was kind of hard because it was over so many states that were affected to try to come up with numbers. And in my research was actually quite difficult because it was over so many different states. Everything was done state by state basis. And you'll see that a little bit later in my slides. Damages that occurred. Okay, gas prices rose throughout the country due to the interruption of production of the refinery in Mississippi and Arkansas. So they couldn't produce gas because they got shut down because of the flood, so gas prices went up. That was damage. Electricity was interrupted in homes near the flooding zone. 2 of the nuclear power plants in Arkansas were put on hold during the flood because of possible danger there, and that affected the rest of the United States with their electricity quite a bit because of a lot of our electricity is pumped out of those. There's 3 major nuclear plants there. So several levees were blown out to divert the damage, so certain areas were caused to flood so that other areas didn't get flooded. So that caused damage. We had to rebuild those levees, and it caused purposeful damage in certain areas to try to mitigate damage in other areas. We got a lot of loss of livestock, crops, homes, the economic problems that come along with a disaster of this magnitude. Assistance provided. One of the things, I had a really hard time finding a lot of information on this. It was just difficult with all the other work that we had to do in class, plus trying to work and stuff. So I couldn't do a whole lot of research, and every time it popped up, I kept coming up with this FEMA. So I just put the FEMA in here. As you can see, this has got individual assistance for Illinois, Mississippi, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and the low one is Louisiana. And then you've also got the public assistance. This is all FEMA dollars that were approved and sent out. And I got this off the FEMA site. You got permanent work that was done to like rebuild the levees and rebuild homes and stuff. You got emergency work that was done, public assistant grants, so forth. There was a lot of money. FEMA put out a lot of money on this one. You got pre-existing mitigation were the levees. They were put in place. They had of course, experience with the Mississippi flooding in different areas in the past, and had built these levees. The Bonnet Spillway had been opened only for the second time since it had been built. The floodwaters were so high and so widespread that the Bonnet Spillway is actually got opened because it was overflowing. You got Birds Point, New Madrid floodway. That levee, as you can see here in the picture, is being repaired, was blown 2 miles across because of floodwaters. Some of these went because of man-made, wanted them to go, and others just went on their own. New mitigation measures that went into place. I think this is so cool. Some of the flood plains with putting out opening up that one levee and other ones going and stuff, and they were doing it planned. So they gave farmers and they gave people a chance to mitigate their damages. And look at what they came up with. They came up with these little levee islands, as they were called in this article that I found, where they had put up levees around their homes and around their property like this to mitigate their damages. They had enough time. They were farmers. They had the equipment. And this is what they came up with, and I thought it was pretty cool. History of the Mississippi River flooding. It has record flooded in 1927, 37, 73, 93, 08, and 2011. I put in here 48 to 64 inches, but in looking at the picture, and it's 48 to 64 feet above normal levels. So it was pretty high. In some areas it was record flooding, and other areas it was only the second or third highest flooding. I mean, it was a long distance that this flood covered, so it varied throughout the things. And will it happen again? Well, given the perfect circumstances, the perfect storm again, it's a good possibility it could do this all over again. It's definitely going to flood every year. It always does in areas, and those areas change every year. So everybody that lives up and down the Mississippi knows, and they know they live in a floodplain, and so they're learning to mitigate, and that's kind of what we're here to learn, aren't we? So I did learn quite a bit about flooding and mitigating flooding. So here's my works cited. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm glad the video worked this time around. I I think this is probably about the 10th time I've tried to record this.